I'm Nadia Taylor, Training and Exercise Manager for the Readiness Support Center. And this is Semper Gumby, a podcast about emergency management in the Corps of Engineers. We'll cover topics about disaster response and recovery, FEMA mission assignments, and Corps-specific response authorities under which we operate for things like flood fighting and coastal emergencies. So today we're here with Diane Acurio, and we're going to be talking about the Civil Military Emergency Preparedness Program, or CMEP. So Diane, thank you for being here. And what do you do for the Corps?
I work for the Army Corps of Engineers Interagency and International Support Division, and I do the Civil Military Emergency Program Management. And this program is actually under OSD from the Defense Governance Management Team, and we do all international development and preparedness program activities in support of OSD.
By the way, OSD stands for Office of the Secretary of Defense. So Diane, as I understand it, USACE got involved with CMEP in the late 90s to re-engage over some, not hot-button topics with former Soviet republics. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct, Nadia. In the mid-1990s, OSD realized that there was a real need for international cooperation with many of the former Soviet bloc countries. As you know, disasters don't know boundaries. If an earthquake occurs or floods occur, there's a real need for international cooperation. And that was something fairly new to a lot of these countries, since they all used to be part of the former Soviet Union and the Iron Curtain. Now they were all independent countries, so they had to understand how to work together. So this new foster of international development and cooperation, these capabilities were very, very important. So understanding these capabilities and taking all of these capabilities out from under the ministries of defense was a very important requirement. The Corps of Engineers understands how military and civilians can work together, and that's one reason why the Corps of Engineers was called upon to help facilitate these capabilities in these former Soviet bloc countries. And understanding that emergency preparedness and response is important at the national and at the state and the local levels, and how all these capabilities fit together was a very important requirement.
So how has the program evolved since the late 90s in those countries?
Well, what started was many bilateral events in Central Europe, and then it grew to regional events also in the Balkans, in the Caucasus, and Central Asia, and then went back to more bilateral events. As we were doing regional events, we realized that many countries were not working well together internally. So then we started doing more interministerial cooperation events. And then the program started growing more and more. We are up to we're over 50 countries right now, but we have done close to 400 events in over 50 countries. This keeps growing, and the types of events we are doing keeps growing. We will do what the U.S. country teams request on behalf of the countries themselves. So a country may not always want to focus on a flood activity or an earthquake activity or an emergency operations workshop, for example. They may want to focus on something entirely different, maybe on something that affects their country very uniquely, on a chemical spill response, or something maybe the Corps won't have that very specific capability, but we can always ask for other subject matter experts as well from other U.S. organizations and agencies. We also work very closely with the U.S. National Guard State Partnership Program, and we work closely with FEMA as well, so we'll take subject matter experts from all these organizations too. But the USACE Corps of Engineers has such a breadth of expertise that we always try to get our expertise from within the Corps, depending upon what these countries want for their workshops and seminars and exercises.
So that leads into my next question, I guess. What do some of these countries want? You mentioned a flood exercise earlier. Are these sort of similar to what we in the emergency management community of practice recognize as flood exercises, tabletop exercises, workshops, and the like?
Yes. Many of the countries, especially in the Balkans, have some major rivers that flood, usually 3 main rivers that flood in the Balkans. And when these rivers flood, they don't just affect one country, they'll affect 3 and 4 countries. Understanding the risks that are involved in the floods, understanding how to work with the countries themselves that are affected, understanding how to work within their countries, because there's some real cultural differences and issues that exist within the countries themselves, understanding mitigation issues in dealing with the floods. It's very, very, very interesting because every time we go in to do a flood exercise or workshop or seminar within a country, every country is different. Every time we go in to do one of these events, it's very different. What we are working with many of the countries now is how to conduct scenario planning with these exercises. So we want to get these countries to the point where we aren't doing events for them or planning events for them, but get them to the point where they can do all the planning for themselves. So if they are planning scenarios for floods, they're planning scenarios for earthquakes, they can go through all the process and procedures, methodology themselves, and step by step in how to plan for the worst case scenario.
Diane, can you take me through sort of a typical life cycle of a project within a CMEP country that we're working with?
Yes, if we are working with a country where, for example, where we would like to do an assessment of emergency preparedness capabilities in a country, we will do that, and we will also conduct a national response plan workshop. And realistically, what we'd like to do then is exercise that national response plan and base that also on the assessment that was conducted in the country. And then later on, go exercise that national response plan and the assessment and identify gaps in their national response plan. This is something the country likes to do as well as the U.S. country team. Those gaps that are identified in their national response plan and based on the assessment as well can then be documented, and the country then will request that we normally go back and re-exercise the national response plan. But in the meantime, they will work on their national response plan and try to plug the holes in their national response plan where those gaps were identified. Now, those gaps could be anywhere from maybe something identified with gaps with maybe Ministry of Health. Maybe there was an issue there, maybe with Ministry of Transportation, and issues such as that. Maybe there were gaps in housing or dealing with pandemics. So wherever the gaps were with their national response plan, we can go back and we can help with exercising those specific issues. And this is a process. Sometimes it's a cycle that we will go through with a country until they feel comfortable that they have a plan in place, a good plan. In some countries, it may take some time. Other countries, they will feel comfortable with a plan that they have. Now, another issue that will come up quite frequently as well is there will be national elections in that country. And when that happens, you have a change of leadership. And when the change of leadership happens, there may be a change in a response plan as well. So then it may cause a change in how the ministries are organized, a change in the leadership in the ministries, and there will be a need then to go back and exercise a response plan again. So many times a country may have a good response plan in place, but it may need to be exercised repeatedly for many years based on many changes within their government.
Okay, so everything starts with an assessment, just to recap, and then it sounds like the process is pretty analogous to just exercising an all-hazards plan at a district level, albeit on a much smaller scale, but just going through the plan, testing it once, finding the gaps, filling the holes, testing the revised plan, and so on and so forth until everybody is satisfied that you do have a plan for all hazards.
That's exactly right. And helping them make a good plan for the country is very important. But also having the concept of whole of government is something fairly new for these countries too. So having them understand that. And one thing I want to make clear is that the whole intent of the CMAP program is to make sure these countries are self-sufficient when it comes to emergency preparedness and response. We don't want to have to be the people to come in and help them respond to a disaster. The intent is for these countries to be able to take care of a disaster within their boundaries themselves and to understand how to request international assistance, but international assistance from a regional perspective. So we are not over there helping them understand how to request U.S. assistance by any means for a disaster. This is for them to understand how to take care of themselves.
So in the second part of the discussion with Diane, we're going to go into some jargon and lingo that I just wanted to clear up front so everyone knows what we're talking about. So we're going to talk about some different combatant commands that we support through the CMEP program. Now, a combatant command is a U.S. Department of Defense command that's composed of forces from at least 2 military departments, and they have a broad and continuing mission. So we'll talk about EUCOM, or the European Command. That's headquartered in Germany, and it covers Europe, Russia, Greenland, and Israel. We'll also talk about CENTCOM, or Central Command, which covers countries in the Middle East, notably Iraq and Afghanistan, also Egypt and Central Asia. We'll talk about Southcom, which is Southern Command, headquartered in Miami, Florida, covering Central and South America, the Caribbean, and the Panama Canal area. Also, we'll cover AFRICOM, or Africa Command, headquartered in Germany, which covers all of Africa except Egypt, which, of course, like we just said, Egypt is covered by CENTCOM. And then finally, PACOM, which is Pacific Command, headquartered in Hawaii and covering the Indo-Asia Pacific region. So if we're supporting EUCOM countries, as we've talked about, what about, say, CENTCOM or Southcom? Are there other combatant commands that we support through this program?
Yes, we support CENTCOM. We've done many events in the CENTCOM region as well. And many of the countries we've worked with in CENTCOM, their issues are very similar to those in EUCOM, such as earthquakes and floods. They're very focused on having the ministries of defense and ministries of emergency situations respond to disasters. They don't always work as well together as some of the other countries, but we're helping them get through some of that. And then now we're focusing on Southcom as well. We're very excited to be working with Southcom in the past 2 years, and we will have a few events this year and hope to have some next year as well. And then hopefully we will have some coming up with AFRICOM in the next few years. We look forward to working with them. We did have some in the past with AFRICOM a number of years ago, so we look forward to working with them too. PACOM does have their own international capacity development program where they deal with emergency preparedness and response, and POD has a very good program that they're working in that area on.
POD, by the way, that's the Corps of Engineers Pacific Ocean Division based out of Hawaii. Let's talk about the Southcom events and initiatives that are going on, just to kind of give people an idea of what maybe one event entails from start to finish. So what are we doing in Southcom, and what does that look like from beginning to end?
With Southcom, these exercises and events, seminars, workshops, first are dealing with more environmental related type focus. And this year it'll be interesting because they will start with Honduras and Guatemala. Last year it was more of a meet and greet and how their agencies and organizations work for disaster preparedness and response. And this year then we go back in and actually do the event. Same thing for Guatemala. This year will be more of a meet and greet and see how their organizations and ministries work for disaster preparedness and response. And then we will help focus on the type of event that they want to do next year. And then we will look at other countries as well. Southcom has a lot of potential for building a good disaster preparedness program in their region, and one of their main focus areas, I believe, is debris management and disaster preparedness and response.
So something like helping them with their debris management plans or workshops of that nature would fall under the CMEP program?
It would fall under CMAP and other disaster preparedness programs as well, with the National Guard State Partnership Program, as well as with NAVFAC.
Now, NAVFAC stands for Naval Facilities Engineering Command. So, Diane, what do you think is the future direction of CMEP as you see it? Where do you see CMEP going a few years down the road?
Since we fall under OSD, Defense Governance Management Team, they have been very supportive of the work that USACE is doing for the CMEP program. So I think as long as they still provide the support and the management and oversight of the program, I see the program still being very strong. And it's only strong because of the great subject matter experts that we have from within the Corps that support this program. The subject matter experts come from all districts within the Corps, and without that wonderful team that we have going out on the events, we wouldn't be able to continue this program. The subject matter experts that we have from within the Corps actually make this program successful by building the relationships with the countries and showing that expertise that the Corps has. And the members from within the countries know they can reach back to these subject matter experts within the Corps and ask questions and get that expertise that they may need for their countries themselves. So that will keep this program strong. That will keep this program going. The people within the countries show a lot of respect to the USACE SMEs, but more importantly, our USACE SMEs show a lot of respect to the people in the countries. And it's very important that we have that high quality of subject matter experts going with us from the Corps of Engineers.
So how do people become subject matter experts in this program? Is there room for more, or are there other ways people can get involved?
We have a few ways that people can become involved. If they're a member of the emergency management cadre, they should contact Eric Conrad and go through him if they're interested in becoming a member of the CMEP team, as well as contact their supervisor and have them contact me. If they're a member of the GIS cadre, they can contact Terry Alberico, and she will refer them to us. And the public affairs team, have them contact Rainey Brunson at headquarters. She manages the public affairs. And any of the other personnel who are interested, have them contact me directly. And I'm listed on the Corps Global at diane.m.acurio at usace.army.mil. As I mentioned before, I am assigned to interagency and international support and at headquarters. But we look forward to continuing the support with the countries in support of OSD.
Well, thank you so much, Diane. We appreciate you being here, and I think maybe in future episodes we can talk a little bit more in depth about maybe some initiatives that we've done this year or coming up the next year. But for now, I think we'll wrap it up here. So I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Nadia.
That's all we have for today's episode. Thanks for joining us, and we hope you've learned something. Please subscribe to our feed and check back for future episodes. I'm Nadia Taylor, and this is Semper Gumby.